Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video we have my Game Week 2 team selection. I've got 2.5 million in the bank, of course one free transfer, and we'll discuss in today's video where I might possibly use that. If you are enjoying the content here on this channel, please do remember to like, comment and subscribe. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So very briefly, before we move on to looking at my Game Week 2 team selection and possible transfers that I might make, just a quick recap of Game Week 1. I scored 82 points, and that is a rank at around 400, 500k at the moment. As a lot of people will be saying to you, and it is rightly so, do not worry about your rank at all for the time being. There is something like 4 or 5 points between being 400k and like 1.5 million. So rank does not matter at the moment. I would say that rank really doesn't matter until about Game Week 12 to Game Week 15. And to be honest, the rank doesn't really matter until Game Week 38, but it's only around sort of Game Week 12 to Game Week 15. I would start to look at my rank a little bit and be wanting to start to move towards the rank that you would want to end the season with. But so much can happen in the doubles and blanks later in the season, especially when you play your chips. I just wouldn't worry about your rank at the moment. But 82 points was a really nice start. And in fact, only 3 of my players blanked, which was Pickford, and maybe I feel a little bit unlucky there, but maybe you should have gone for Johnson or Onana. We'll discuss that in the next section. And then Rashford and Fernandes were the only 2 outfield players to blank. Manchester United dropped a bit of a stinker, but also Wolves were incredibly impressive. I was very impressed with Chilwell and Estepinian going forward. They were very attacking, and both players could have potentially got a lot more points on another day. Saliba was very lucky to get the assist, and I wasn't overly convinced with Arsenal, but it was nice to get the 5 points from him. Martinelli and Saka both getting attacking returns. I wasn't overly impressed with Martinelli. I think he was a little bit isolated on the left, and he was basically expected to just take on the fullback rather than having that link-up play with the likes of Havertz and Rice on the left. So a little bit worried about Martinelli, but he did still pick up an assist. And João Pedro and Mbeumo, 2 cheap assets that both had big chances, missed their big chances, but did score their penalties, which meant that they both came away with 7 points. And of course, Erling Haaland is the robot. So Game Week 1 went really well, 82 points. I'm absolutely delighted. Let's move on to Game Week 2 and look at how I'm set up for the upcoming game week. So guys, before we look at my team for Game Week 2, can I just ask you to do one thing? I've really appreciated the support over the recent weeks, but we are on the road to 90,000 subscribers. So if you are watching this and you are someone that has not yet subscribed, please do consider subscribing. Loads of weekly content and a deadline stream every single week that will help guide you through the FPL season. But moving into Game Week 2, we are currently set up in a 3-5-2. I have 2.5 million in the bank with lots of flexibility to use that money. And my team value has already risen by 0.4 million at the time of me recording this. We're building that team value nice and early, and we have that flexibility to use the money in the bank for some early transfers. So I'm feeling like I'm in a really good position, and the team is in a strong position as well. As you can see, currently rated at 98% according to Fantasy Football Hub. Not the best predicted points for this game, can actually only 94% rated for Game Week 2. But over the foreseeable future, over the next 5 game weeks, the team is rated at 98%. If you would like to get your team rated for free, you can still do that using the link below in the comments. And at the moment, Fantasy Football Hub are still running the 50% off promo if you use the second link in the description. So do feel free to sign up or just get your team rated for free. It's definitely a product that I'm enjoying, and I'm using the site every day pretty much to help me with my FPL decisions. So the first thing that is probably worth discussing ahead of Game Week 2 is Turner versus the other goalkeepers. And I discussed this in my preview video, but to be honest, I think I would start Turner ahead of most other goalkeepers. There are a few that I might start ahead of Turner, and we'll discuss that, but Pickford, Johnston and Onana just don't have the fixtures. Villa, Arsenal and Tottenham are not easy enough for me anyway to play them ahead of Turner, who has a really nice fixture against Sheffield United at home. I know it's only Game Week 1 and it's a very small sample size, so we can't trust it too much, but Forest defended very well against Arsenal. They conceded about a 0.8, 0.9 XG. And Sheffield United created very little against Crystal Palace. They had one of the worst XGs created in that opening game week. So Sheffield United don't look brilliant going forward. Nottingham Forest looked pretty decent in Game Week 1. The fixtures for the other goalkeepers aren't great. For me, it feels fairly obvious to start Turner. The only one that I would maybe play ahead of Turner is Flecken. I think Brentford have got a really nice fixture at Fulham at home, and I feel like Sheffield United versus Fulham at home, the fixture isn't that much better for Turner, and you would say that Flecken and Brentford are probably predicted to be a slightly better defence, despite obviously conceding a couple in Game Week 1. So maybe that's the only goalkeeper that I can think of that I might play ahead of Turner. But for the most part, I'd put Turner in. This is why we chose him. The back three, I am really, really happy with. Chilwell looks so incredibly attacking, and we knew that based on pre-season. I would argue if you didn't choose Chilwell, it was either because you wanted to wait and see on the Chelsea defence, or you just weren't paying that much attention during pre-season, because we spoke about it to death, how good Chilwell looked. He was basically playing like an inside forward at points. The only thing I would say is in Game Week 1, when he looked even better and even more attacking, Chelsea were playing like a back five, and Chilwell and James were playing very, very attacking. I do think that moving forward, especially with the signings of Caicedo and Lavia, that Chelsea will switch back to a back four. And in doing so, I still feel like Chilwell will play fairly advanced, but Reece James might sit a little bit more defensive and almost filling it as a back three at points. And it may mean that Chilwell is slightly more defensive as well. That being said, I still expect Chilwell to, in my opinion, be the best defender to own over the next sort of 6 to 8 game weeks. And if you don't own Chilwell, he is one player that I would prioritise bringing in as soon as this week and at the very latest next week for Luton at home. Absolutely delighted I started with Chilwell. And in a similar manner, Estepinian, he looked so attacking. Could have had several assists, to be honest. And if it had come away with a clean sheet as well, we could have been looking at like a 12 to 15 pointer. Still picked up 7 points despite getting booked, despite no clean sheet, just due to how attacking he was and how much he created. So love Estepinian in there. I, of course, like I said, made the decision last minute due to very weak rumours that we had that Gabriel was potentially going to miss out in Game Week 1. I ended up bringing Saliba in. He, of course, did pick up 5 points, but I'm not overly happy to have Saliba in my team either, to be honest. I don't feel like the attacking potential is there with Saliba as it was with Gabriel. Gabriel has better XG data across previous seasons, so Gabriel was the one that I wanted. And I also just don't think, I think for £5 million, Saliba will be okay for clean sheets and he might get the odd attacking return. But I'm looking at someone like a Reece James who will have so much more attacking threat, even if he plays a slightly more defensive role. And other 4.5s like Rico Henry that could have more attacking threat too. And I'm looking at that Saliba spot, and in the foreseeable future, I could definitely see myself transferring out Saliba and bringing someone else in. And the most likely replacement is Reece James. I've, of course, got 2.5 million in the bank, and I've thought about maybe doing Saliba to Reece James this week, but I just don't see the necessity to do it because Saliba against Crystal Palace away versus James against West Ham away, you may say that Reece James is a slightly better option, but all things considered, I don't know if he is such a good option ahead of Saliba in Game Week 2 that it is worth using my free transfer and not having an extra week of information to potentially assess how fit is Reece James, is he potentially on penalties, and how do Chelsea look defensively against a slightly weaker team than the Liverpool attack against West Ham. So there are a few things that I want to assess, and as a result, I don't think I'll be selling Saliba at least in Game Week 2. I do think if you've got Gabriel or Stones in your team, and there are any doubts in your mind that they're going to start in Game Week 2, doing Gabriel or Stones to Chilwell feels like a relatively okay move to make. Assuming you've got money in the bank and you can do it for free, I wouldn't probably take a hit to do it. But yeah, if you don't own Chilwell, he probably should be a priority transfer in. And then my two substitute bench players for the defence are Udogie and Botman. I feel like both of these players could be really valuable over the coming game weeks. I spoke about the reason that I chose Udogie and Botman instead of the other £4 million defenders is they just rotate so nicely in with my current back three. Yes, I may well end up changing those and bringing in the likes of Reece James, but Udogie and Botman still rotate really nicely, especially I think as Udogie rotates well with Estepinian and Botman rotates quite well with Chilwell and Saliba. So regardless of what moves I make, I like having those two on the bench, and I feel like they could be really, really good options over the coming weeks. But for game weeks 1, 2, and 3, I knew that there was a very good chance that I wouldn't have Udogie and Botman in my starting 11. So that's the defence. I'm actually really, really happy with it. Got an eye on Reece James. Let's move on to the midfield. So moving on to the midfield, and I can definitely see a lot of movement taking place in the midfield over the coming game weeks. A lot of the £6.5 million midfielders looking good. A lot of players obviously have really nice fixture swings coming up. The likes of Maddison, Richarlison, Enzo Fernandez looks like he could even be a decent option at a cheaper price. So there's probably going to be a lot of movement, but I'll just go through each of the players and explain if I'm happy with them, if I might sell them, and where I'm potentially looking at going. I'm actually going to start with Mbeumo, Fulham away. I think I actually said Fulham at home for the Flecken part, but Fulham away this week for Brentford. It's a nice fixture, and actually the fixture run coming up for Brentford after that first game against Spurs is looking really, really good. We've now had confirmation that Mbeumo is on penalties. He looks relatively nailed. Unfortunately, I do think that one of the reasons Mbeumo looked pretty good in game week 1 is that when Brentford set up in a 3-back formation or a 5-back, depending how you want to look at it, Mbeumo will play up front alongside Wissa. I think when they switch to a 4 at the back formation, Mbeumo can play more so on the wing with Wissa through the middle. So I actually think that this 5-back/3-back formation that they tend to play against slightly stronger opposition might actually suit Mbeumo slightly more. So maybe the easier fixtures won't be a good thing for Mbeumo. We'll have to wait and see there. But I do like the fixtures coming up. I still think he's the best 6.5. I love that he's on penalties. His minutes is good. His data's good too. Hopefully, he'll start to improve his conversion rate as well, and I still really like him. That being said, I still feel like Eze should not be sold. He's one of the top sold players this week. He looked really good in game week 1. The fixtures are a bit of a mixed bag now for Crystal Palace, but I still feel like it's worth holding on to him if you own him. He was on all corners, all free kicks. He's going to be on penalties too. He's very talismanic. I still like Eze, and Diaby definitely caught my eye in game week 1. And it was only a small sample size, of course, and they really did struggle against Newcastle defensively. But going forward, Watkins and Diaby looked excellent. So I do like some of the other 6.5s. I still feel like Mbeumo is the best. The other player that I am very happy with in my midfield is Bukayo Saka. He looked really good in game week 1. We've spoken about how good he is at home as well. And I still feel like he is the most nailed Arsenal attacker. On penalties, as far as we're aware, he actually took some set pieces pretty poorly, to be honest, in game week 1. But he did take some set pieces. So love Bukayo Saka. No plans to sell him. I'll then move on to the other Arsenal asset, which was Martinelli. I don't think he had a bad game, and his assist for the goal was exceptional. Every time he got the ball, he looked good. But he did also look very isolated, and we spoke about this in pre-season. When Gabriel Jesus was out, and especially when Nketiah plays, Nketiah doesn't have the same link-up play that Jesus does with Martinelli. So immediately, Martinelli has lost that player that he can bounce off player 1-2s with. Of course, the Brazilian contingency too. I feel like they play very well together, so that's an immediate loss. And I also feel like Havertz wasn't really doing enough, in my opinion, to link up with Martinelli either. I know he was playing that role, and even if it is that Havertz drops out and Trossard comes in, or potentially Declan Rice plays an even more advanced role, I do worry that all of those options just aren't going to quite link up enough with Martinelli. And he felt very isolated. And what was basically expected of him was they gave him the ball and they basically said, attack the fullback. And yes, Martinelli can do that, but that's not the way that you get lots of goals and lots of assists. You want him in those more intricate areas inside the box where he's playing 1-2s and getting shots off. So I am a little bit worried about Martinelli. And maybe I'm just convincing myself that he's an issue because he is the one player in my midfield where he's at a really nice price point to switch to someone like a James Maddison in game week 3 or game week 4. So I've got my eye on that. They've, of course, got a nice fixture in game week 3. So maybe I don't make the move next week. But I am looking at it as downgrading to a Diaby or an Eze, or moving to a James Maddison, or even potentially a Richarlison too, if he does look good in game week 2 and we feel like he's going to get very good minutes. So that Martinelli spot is definitely up for grabs, and I need to see quite a bit from him in game week 2 and game week 3 to change my mind. And then, of course, we've got the two Manchester United assets, Rashford and Fernandes. And I will hold my hands up. I'm a Manchester United fan. That was a terrible performance, especially the first half. One of the worst first half I've seen in a long time. In fact, the only first half that I could think was worse was the game against Liverpool, which I don't want to relive in my mind. But it was an absolute shocker. But Wolves were very good as well. And we do have to give Wolves credit. And maybe it was just the case that Wolves played very well. United got off to a slow start. And when you can have maybe a slow start, the opening 10 minutes is quite slow. It can start to weigh on your mind. Obviously, the crowd get on board. The away fans, I should say, get on board. The home fans seem a little bit agitated. And all of a sudden, the game can get away from you. So game state is quite important. We don't know if now this Manchester United team will just continue to struggle in game week 2, 3, 4, etc. I feel like we need a bigger sample size than just one game week. So whilst I do have my eyes on Rashford at 9 million and Fernandes 8.5, taking up a hell of a lot of my budget, I am thinking that I need to give it at least another game week, probably even game week 3 as well against Nottingham Forest. Feels like you can't take them out for that either. So I do understand if you want to sell Fernandes or Rashford for the likes of a Maddison or a Diaby that looked really good in game week 1. But for me, I'm looking at it and thinking, let's wait. Let's find out, is Maddison the best player? Is Richarlison the best player? Do we want to own a Chelsea midfielder, or is there a 6.5 we want to downgrade to? Try and find out who's on penalties for Chelsea and Tottenham as well, because if Son, Maddison or Richarlison are on penalties, it might make them a better option. I want to gain a little bit more data. I want to give Fernandes and Rashford another chance, and I do think like this Tottenham game could be quite open. Tottenham versus Brentford was a very open game, and Wolves versus Manchester United was very open too. So if both teams attack well, there could be kind of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 goals in this game. I would not be surprised. So for the time being, I'm not overly stressed about the midfield. But again, just to recap, one of Richarlison and Maddison, maybe a Chelsea midfielder, and Diaby and Eze do all look really good to me. Of course, just to finish the midfield section, I don't have any Liverpool midfielders. Jota, Diaz, and of course, Mohamed Salah. I would love Salah in my team. But as I said in the Game Week preview video and the transfer plans video, you chose to go without Salah for a reason. If you chose a non-Salah draft, there was a reason for that. You knew that Salah had a good fixture in Game Week 2. Unless you were always planning to take a hit to bring him in Game Week 2, which probably doesn't make a lot of sense. You should have just started with him. I think you just go without, except that you probably don't have the best captaincy option in Game Week 2 because Salah is the best captaincy option. Hope that Erling Haaland continues to deliver. Hope that Salah has a quiet day, and just back the players that you chose instead. So, yes, it's annoying that I don't have any Liverpool assets, but I'm not taking a hit to bring in Salah. I don't feel like it's worth a 1 week punt on the likes of Jota and Diaz when we don't even know if they'll start. I'm backing my boys. Let's move on to the 2 forwards. So moving on to the 2 forwards, I of course have Erling Haaland, and because I don't have Mohamed Salah, Erling Haaland will be getting the armband. Just quickly on captaincy, I've discussed it in the preview and I kind of mentioned it there. Salah is the best captaincy option for me. If you own Salah, you captain Salah. For me anyway, I feel like that is the main advantage of choosing him alongside Haaland. If you're never going to captain Salah, of course he can still be valuable, but you lose a lot of the reason that you have a premium asset, which is usually to rotate captaincy, because I don't think that the likes of Fernandes and Martinelli can match Salah, but for 4 million less, if you're not even going to captain Salah, can they get close enough to justify spending and spreading the other 4 million that you would save? Then I think they can, but the captaincy is the real advantage that you have by going for Salah in Game Week 2. So for me, if you have him, you captain him. I don't have him, and there is no other standout captaincy option, so Haaland is going to get the armband. Of course, he did play 90 minutes in the Super Cup. He scored his penalty in the penalty shootout. I don't think that will matter too much. I still expect him to start and get pretty significant minutes. And the only reason he usually comes off is if City are winning comfortably. And if City are winning comfortably, it's usually the case that Erling Haaland has done fairly well. So he gets the armband for me. And then the 11th player in my starting 11 is João Pedro. Looks like a really good enabler at 5.5. I feel like people are either over-exaggerating how good João Pedro is going to be in FPL, or doing the opposite and still feel like he's not a great asset. He's somewhere in between for me. He's not a terrible asset, of course. He's 5.5. He scored a penalty in Game Week 1, and he got very good minutes. I think he came off in like the 88th minute for Enciso. He came off after Solly March too, so he may well be one of the more renowned Brighton assets. But yes, his conversion isn't great, and his finishing wasn't great in Game Week 1. He missed an absolutely massive chance. But I feel like he will be very good value at 5.5. And if you want to keep him in your team, you absolutely can. I suppose the issue that we have with João Pedro is there are other forwards that we might potentially want. You could move to a Liverpool forward this week if you think Gakpo or Darwin could do fairly well against Bournemouth and you think they'll start. You could move to an Ollie Watkins who has Everton and Burnley, 2 really nice fixtures. And Ollie Watkins and Diaby, as I said, looks really, really good in Game Week 1. So that's another nice option. And then the one that I am currently lining up potentially for Game Week 3, but I could even make the move this week, is João Pedro to Jackson. Game Week 3 against Luton at home is an excellent fixture, arguably the best fixture in the league at the moment based on what we saw in Game Week 1. And the fixtures are just so good from there on out for Chelsea. And I was actually really impressed with Jackson in Game Week 1. I thought his movement against Liverpool was great. He didn't convert his chances, but we saw Erling Haaland in the Community Shield. I don't know if you remember. In that first game, his movement looked exceptional, failed to convert a few chances. A lot of people wrote him off, went for Harry Kane, and then he started to deliver. So I don't think one game of Jackson missing chances should mean that he's no longer a good option. I currently think, in my opinion anyway, I would much rather see him get chances and miss them than only get one chance but finish it. I'm much more of the opinion in FPL, generally anyway, that I want my players to get as many opportunities as possible. And if they miss a few, fine, but I want them getting the opportunities to score rather than just getting like one opportunity per game and having to finish that. So I really like Jackson. I do currently have Mabama on the bench, and that actually moves me on to what the AI recommended transfers are over at Fantasy Football Hub. So at the moment, they are currently saying that the best option for me, you probably can't quite see that, is to save a transfer for Game Week 2. So their recommendation, according to the algorithm, is actually to save a transfer because in Game Week 3, there could be further moves that would benefit my team. But if I am to, as you can see, the top recommended transfer, according to the AI, is to do Mabama to Jackson. My only issue with that is if we move over to my team, this is my team for Game Week 2, right? If I do Mabama to Jackson, which I won't confirm here because I just want to show you what that would look like, my team for this week, firstly, would have an incredibly big benching headache. So let's say I do make that move. Do you know, I'll actually plug that in. And by the way, I'm using the My Team feature over at Fantasy Football Hub. Like I said, you can get sort of a free version where you just get your initial rating down below. If you want to look at your team for future weeks, you do have to pay, but it's only £3 per month. There is a second link in the description that you can get 50% off at the moment. So if I just bring in Jackson in that spot, and then basically, who on earth do I bench? This is the issue. So I could bench one of the Arsenal attackers against Palace, but I mean, they've got good data, and when they play, they do tend to be good, despite my concerns around Martinelli. I don't want to bench either of my Man United assets. I can't really justify benching Mbeumo against Fulham. João Pedro's on penalties, and yes, Wolves did look good in Game Week 1, but if we expect him to start on pens, does it make sense to bench him? And of course, I'm not benching Haaland. So Jackson creates a real benching headache immediately for me, but also in future weeks too. So for that reason, I don't think I can justify it. The algorithm would suggest that I bench João Pedro, but that doesn't seem like a wise use of my transfers. And the other reason with that move is, of course, I have nothing in the bank if I make that move. That would take up my full 2.5. So let's say that the current plan is to roll a transfer going into game week 3. So this is my team for game week 3. The issue is it's 100% rated going into game week 3 because the team is perfect on paper. So many home fixtures. In fact, the only away fixture in my starting 11 is Haaland against Sheffield United. The midfield has great fixtures. Double against Fulham, 2 against Nottingham Forest, and then Burmo's got Crystal Palace at home. Chilwell's obviously got Luton as well. And if I just go down to the bench, obviously he's not particularly highly rated by the AI over at Hub because his minutes aren't secure yet. But Udogie currently has Bournemouth away in game week 3 too. So I've also got the decision, do I play Saliba against Fulham or Udogie against Bournemouth? For the attacking threat, I may well play Udogie, but this is what my team looks like with 2 free transfers and 2.5 in the bank. If I made the Jackson move, I'm in an even trickier position. I will just very briefly float the idea of a bench boost in game week 3, because if I made the move of bringing Jackson in for Mubama, I would have João Pedro against West Ham, Saliba against Fulham, Turner against United, and Botman against Liverpool, with another free transfer to use to improve the bench. So a bench boost in game week 3 isn't out of the question, but for now I think we're gonna go against that. So this is the position that I'll be going into game week 3, and the players that I want, I think there are 3 main ones that I'm considering at the moment. That is one of James Maddison or Richarlison. I don't think I'll go for both in game week 3. So basically a Spurs midfielder. Hopefully we find out who's on penalties and it will be that one. At the moment I am leaning towards James Maddison. I would like Reece James, assuming he's fit and firing after game week 2, and it looks like he's getting significant minutes because he was brought off early in game week 1, and there are rumours that he was fatigued. Not injured, but just a little bit fatigued. So we'll have to wait and see there. And of course, if Reece James is on penalties, he is absolutely coming into my team. And then the other option is Jackson. Now, I could make all 3 of those moves, but I'm not overly keen to take a hit in a week where my team's already good. So what is most likely probably is going to be João Pedro out, despite him having an okay fixture. Bringing in Jackson against Luton at home, which feels like an immediate upgrade, despite João Pedro being an absolutely fine option. That then leaves me 1 million in the bank. And at the moment, I know he's a fine option, Saliba. I know the Arsenal defence are really good. But I like the idea of keeping Udogie and Botman. I don't see any need to take either of those out. At the moment, I am considering bringing in Reece James for Saliba, but that would mean probably benching Udogie anyway, unfortunately, against Bournemouth at home, which it does feel pretty tricky to do, but I feel like that's probably the sensible set of moves. You can see that makes my team 100% rated over the next 5 game weeks. It gives me a 100% game week rating too. I've got triple Chelsea against Luton. The only thing is then I don't have that James Maddison move. So for a -4, the issue is I love my midfield for game week 3, but for a -4, I could take out one of the Manchester United midfielders or the Arsenal ones. Let's just say for now, I'm not convinced by Martinelli. I could then bring in, as I say, you can see he's at the top of the list there, James Maddison against Bournemouth. But these are some of the moves that I'm considering. You can see I have plenty in the bank to make these moves. I can't see myself getting priced out of any of the moves that I want to make. And the team will look really good, and the bench still looks pretty strong too. So these are the rough plans, and this is the reason that I'm currently leaning towards rolling a transfer. But if I had issues with my team in game week 2, if I had a Gabriel or a Stones that I wanted to sell, or if I owned a KDB, I would definitely be willing to make the move. So don't feel like you've got to roll. But if your team is in a similar sort of position to mine where it looks pretty good, then maybe roll, because then you can use 2 free transfers or even take a -4 in game week 3 if you want to. And you will see that your team just looks so good then. Set up from there on in. Triple Chelsea would be amazing. Trying to get 1 or 2 Spurs assets in there as well. The team will look absolutely brilliant. And then you can start to focus your transfers on, do you maybe want to remove one of your Manchester United midfielders for the likes of a Diaby or an Eze? So I'll leave it there. That's currently what the team looks like. Let me know what you think down below. Do you think I should roll, or are there potentially moves that you think I should consider? And also let me know what your dilemmas are down below too. So guys, there you have it. That is my Game Week 2 team selection. Currently planning on rolling, but I could be convinced to make a transfer. If you have enjoyed today's video, please do drop a like on it. Let's aim for 3,000 likes on the video. You've supported me so much recently, but let's keep that going and smash a like. And also make sure to subscribe. If you somehow watched to the end and you're not yet subscribed, please do consider doing so. We do these videos and multiple other videos throughout the week, every single game week, to guide you through the FPL season. Until next time, thank you very much for watching. Cheers. Bye-bye.